Hello and welcome everyone to this special edition, the reboot of Here's Tom with the Weather. This podcast, up until now, was started about 2.5, 3 years ago, with more of a spiritual outlook on life, and we were investigated all kinds of spiritual beliefs as they related to the 12 steps, particularly with regards to step 3 and step 11, and an open-minded investigation of higher powers and the many different forms and guises that it comes across in all 12-step fellowships. So, hi, Joe. How you doing, mate?
Great to be back, and I'm very excited about our new frontier.
Yes, very much. In the Star Trek fashion, definitely. We are boldly going where no alcoholic or addict has gone before. So, wanted to just sort of give everyone, like I say, an outline of where we are and what's happened. So over the past year, this podcast has grown. It's grown in popularity, and we're getting loads of hits on YouTube and Spotify and iTunes and the various channels and outlets. But I think over the past 2 or 3 years, it has 2 or 3 months, it's felt as if we've looked under as many rocks as we can and sort of found as many furry critters, spiritual critters, as we can find. And I want to move on, and I want to move on into a new direction. And I think Joe and we had a discussion, didn't we, Joe? And
Yeah,
we're opening up. So, Joe, do you want to take it from here and just give us an idea what we're going to be talking about?
yeah, sure. Like we were talking about a number of things. One, the Friday thing was going to be a bit of a problem moving forward for David. I said, we're not television. Pick a day. Like it can be any day. And so we sort of thought, well, if we're going to do a new day, are we going to stay with the same thing? And there were a couple of things where our source of new people to come in was getting thinner, and we had some canceled guests and that sort of thing. So it was getting a little frustrating. And I said, why don't we talk about AA going forward? And when I say AA, I mean the larger recovery movement, the larger recovery community, because this never has been an AA meeting per se, even though in many cases, all or most of the participants here have been from AA, right? But, treat it like a business meeting. What do we still need to do to broaden the gateway to make AA more workable, livable, and enjoyable for a broader community? What can we do as opposed to the armchair quarterbacking? They've got to do this at central office, and we'll get people from central office here and we'll talk to them. What are you discussing at this year's General Service Conference? What's on the docket for public information? How is Zoom affected, resources and seventh tradition? Like we can do all of that stuff on Zoom. Everyone is, sitting at a chair in their home. People are more accessible than ever. So let's get them in. And there's been a lot more study about recovery-oriented systems of care, which includes peer-to-peer mutual aid, like what we have in AA or other fellowships. And like a lot of what was mystery is now being academically sort of studied. Let's get some of those people come in, and they objectively sort of observe what works in, sort of an alcoholic's life when they join recovery. So, we hear things like AA's the last house on the block. Well, that might have been true once, but there's a whole subdivision there now. And just because we haven't been to all of those meetings, we can have some of those people come in and sort of talk to us about our common suffering, our, common solution, whatever that might make up. And one thing will lead to another, I think. I think this will constantly sort of unveil, because, there's going to be more mystery than answers, even in what we're doing here. The spiritual, of course, but when it comes to, AA's anonymity tradition and the millennial generation, that'd be just a great topic. Like, I mean, their first drink was on social media. Their first trip to a detox was on social media. Now we're telling them to have a secret life where nobody knows about your victories in life, right? You've got to keep, like, how well will young people like who are coming into AA today, how are they going to feel about, you know, our idea of anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films? And that, like all of our traditions, has to be a personal choice based on AA's collective experience, and not rules that we're pointing our fingers at each other about how you're breaking tradition 3, you're breaking tradition, you know, like who are these AA police, right? So I think we can have a lively discussion about how traditions will look in a new era. And you know, I can't wait for some of the conversations, and I'm sure some of these are going to be touchy subjects, right? The people are going to line up pretty quickly on one side or the other. And this is the perfect forum for that, because we respect the other people whose views we completely disagree with. We will let them have their piece, and we'll agree to disagree in the most respectful of ways. This isn't going to be Facebook, where it's just, you know, the left fighting with the right sort of thing. It'll be hopefully, you know, finding some common ground where we didn't before, right?
Yeah, and I think this came out of our discussion. We've spoken on many occasions. Hey Jeb, we've spoken about on many occasions about like the whole Zoom, you know, revolution, and through lockdown has kind of fundamentally changed AA and all 12-step fellowships in terms of opening it up to the wider world, and demonstrating that the new technology has made it more accessible than ever before. And that, you know, it seems to me, in terms of the huge numbers of beginners that are coming, you know, newcomers are coming to meetings, is that there's a new generation of people coming through who are absolutely much more comfortable coming into a Zoom meeting than they ever will be going to a traditional face-to-face meeting in a church basement or a community center, or wherever that might be. And that Zoom has created that. We've opened it up. All of a sudden, there's this massive things open, and I think, and we've just, you know, we've had those conversations where it seems to be. And again, I don't want to get into a bitch session about AA, because AA to me is fundamentally the most amazing thing that's ever happened in the world. But in terms of ways that perhaps we can start to perhaps change perception, you know, that AA does need to sort of welcome this new, you know, the Zoom's created a lot more diversified 12-step meetings, for instance.
Yeah, the last thing we need to do is to rag on, you know, like I think a critical look at how we can alter or improve things for everybody's benefit, or for the larger good anyway, is a healthy thing to do, as opposed to, you know, just you know, complaining about how they're doing it all wrong at general service or in that meeting down the street, right? Like of course I'm a member of my group and not that group, right? But you know, I should pay attention to how my group could run better, what my group shortcomings are, you know, how our newcomers are getting lost in the shuffle and nobody even has their number once we realize they're missing, right? Did you get their number? No. You know, there are some challenges with Zoom. It brings us huge new opportunity, but there were things we naturally did in face-to-face situations with new people, for instance, that are just harder to replicate in this sort of digital world, but we can suss them out. One of our guests that's coming in a couple of weeks, his name is David Best. He wrote a book called Pathways to Recovery and Desistance, the Social Contagion of Hope. And he's an academic guy, and he studies criminology and addiction. I think they have a lot in common. And so he's been studying people who study us and looking at all of these studies. And you've heard me use the term chime, that I just love. I got that from his book, the idea that what all of recovery has in common, people who go to meetings, people who don't go to meetings, people who go to those meetings instead of these meetings, connection, hope, identity, meaning, empowerment. He sort of brought that sort of idea to my lexicon, and we're going to talk to him about what his academic findings are. Like, he's not in recovery, he doesn't have a bone to pick with AA, he doesn't prefer it to other methods of recovery, but I think he's going to give us some context to what's working for us, and maybe some new insights as well. Another thing he found is, after he went and studied in all these places, Australia, the US, Scotland, England, Wales, he went back to some of these centers after he'd collected the data, and he asked people, how many people do you think find recovery, like 5 years of sustainable recovery? And they were all pessimistic. Like, he was studying their clients, but they all said, I don't know, 5%, 10%, when the real number is like 50, 55, 60% in some cases with some of Bill White's studies. And their pessimism is probably caused by, they see the revolving door people who constantly come back, constantly in a downward cycle, and they don't see the people who thrive when they leave the treatment center, right? So you only know what you know, right? And that it's just interesting to see someone who says, cheer up, you're doing a much better job than we are with solving obesity, solving diabetes, solving other lifestyle illnesses, right? Alcoholism and addiction, and the peer community that's built around it is doing a better job than a lot of these other problems that are self-inflicted wounds. So,
Wow.
Who knew, eh?
Yeah, who knew? That's amazing. So just I want to get everyone's feedback and just have a discussion. So I guess what we're proposing is, and everyone that's here, and if you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook or wherever you see this, is please don't be afraid to add your comments underneath it, and we'll take that into consideration as well. We are very fluid about stuff. So what I'm going to do is just so what the idea is that. And there's a point that I wanted to actually talk about what you said before, Joe. There's something else that we spoke about earlier, but to give you an idea. But we want to talk to you guys about the issues that are facing recovery. So 12-step recovery, or what stuff that we can do to enhance it with an eye to perhaps allowing us as a fellowship to embrace new ideas and new outlooks, and being more welcoming, particularly for things which are close to my own heart, like diversity. Okay, and being open, just allowing more, that whole thing we've always said in this podcast is about live and let live. That's, for me, is the big thing, is live and let live, or just take it as it comes and accept other people's ideas, which is what we're sort of saying here today. So and I just wanted to just touch on one thing, just to reiterate kind of where I'm sort of coming from with this, is that Joe told me a little while ago. Now, just remember that Joe is an atheist, right? And I'm not. I'm not anything, but he's particularly an atheist. But what I admire about him, what he was telling me the other day, was that he posted something about a Christian 12-step group, I think, somewhere in the northern US.
Southeast UK, near Essex.
Oh, Southeast UK, who were kicked out of AA. Okay, so that's my point. Now, I don't truck with Christianity in any sense, or any kind of organized religion, but I certainly uphold their right to have a 12-step meeting under the auspices of AA, if that's what it takes for them to get sober. That's my understanding. I might be wrong, and you might disagree with me. Let's discuss it. But that's the point, is I'm trying to say here, is let's talk about these issues, about being more welcoming and being more Christian. I don't know, but being more open and welcoming to other people. So I don't know. So what do you think about that, Joe?
I think it would be great if we could get someone from the UK General Service Office just to talk about what was the reasoning. We're not here to, put you on the rack or anything and throw stones. Just where are we? What did they do wrong? Like I get it, we're not a religion, but the group, doesn't it have so much autonomy that it is has inalienable rights, that there's nobody that oversees them, that tells the group, if the group conscience is we're going to do things this way, whether it's they could call themselves, like there's a couple of people from Ontario here, the Tim Hortons group, which would be kind of, you don't want to be doing that, right? Like associating a brand with AA. But I mean, we've got a U of T group at the University of Toronto, and we've got a St. Clement's group in the St. Clement's Church, and the Port Credit group, right? And those are all things AA says you want to steer away from, things that give the impression of endorsement or affiliation, right? And but they're not rules. They are not rules. They're just our collective experience that are worth paying attention to.
Okay, so fantastic. So I don't know, I've got my friend John here. John was first in. John, have you got any thoughts on any ideas about what we spoke about?
Just a definition of when we say we, are we talking about the here's Tom with the weather group, how we as Tom with the weather group can function within all of this, and what is it we seek from the group itself, our group, if you like? Is this what we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
in terms of discussion topics and ideas for the future of the podcast, really, or the future of it.
Yeah, I do. I really like it, and I'm just aware of what we can and we can't do, And I agree with everything that Joe says. I'm not bright enough to be an atheist. I'm an agnostic, but so I agree with everything that Joe has said. I'm just wondering, in terms of us as a group, here's Tom with the weather group, just to take and another thing I'm aware of. Not having enough information about things. As a former politician, I was always aware of setting up a phony proposition and attacking it, and or a straw. I think you call them in America straw man. Is that it?
Just set up a straw man argument, yeah.
And like I would go to a meeting and I'd hear people say, someone said, I know what, I hate people who say they have it good all the time, and that becomes the theme of the meeting. And then I say to myself, well, I've never heard anyone say they have it good all the time, So and that might sound a bit trivial. I'm just thinking in terms of the Christian fellowship. We need to know, and it's well worth finding out if that is actually what happened. And I'm not saying it's not what happened. I just don't know. I just don't know, Joe. My own thing in relation to Zoom, and I would appreciate David's work in this, universal work in this, is Zoom has revolutionized AA. It's made it a lot easier for, I think, it's mainly women, but it's also men, single parent families here in Northern Ireland, where to go to a meeting, you had to organize a babysitter, you had to leave early, you had to get a bus, you had to drive, bus, maybe an hour journey bus, an hour journey back pay. Now you can put your kids to bed, man or woman, and at 5 to 8, you can say, I'm going to go on a meeting, and 5 minutes later, you're on a meeting. It's had a profound effect on AA. And it's been a knock-on effect in this as well, in attendance at meetings. Prior to pandemic in Northern Ireland, I'd say a third of the fellowship were women, young women, and young, 30 to 50. And now I'm a greeter at our group, and most meetings are 75 to 80% women. It's a complete revolutionary in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Wow.
Phenomenal. And young people too is, in Ireland, unfortunately, in Ireland, we don't allow special interest groups. But a lot of countries do, and there's a phenomenal upsurge in young people's meetings. Young people, I go to their meetings just as an observer. Well, I actually can go because you have to have come into AA before you were 29, and I just made it in most groups, and they're phenomenal meetings. They are just phenomenal meetings. They're just phenomenal, and they're not caught up in anything that we used to get caught up in. I think is God and all that stuff. They're not caught up in any of that, or concepts or anything like that. And by the way, I shouldn't have said that. Concepts are great. I love AA's concept. I'm not saying reading now, the brilliant books on the addiction stuff. The reason I like them is because I identify with the problem, okay? But very few of them, very seriously, I think very few of them outline a new method of recovery, if you like. So you'll get a book that says it's New York Times bestsellers. I'm only making this up. New York Times bestseller list, sold 10 million copies, called Connectivity and Addiction, which I believe is very relevant, by the way. I'm just using that, isn't it? And it's brilliant. You're reading, oh, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. It's from a point of view of identification. And then there's no, you go, well, that's great. I must buy another book. I'll put that in the bookshelf. Look at them all behind me here. And this is, I just, because Jill brought the guy's name up. I only found this out recently. Joe and I were talking about it. I'll just finish on this. About the doctor's opinion, which normally when in AA they talk about the doctor's opinion is the physical allergy, but the first line in the doctor's opinion says, we alcoholics have known, we doctors have known for a long time of the urgent need for alcoholics to practice moral psychology. And I looked that up on a dictionary. It's about moral psychology. It says the application of ethical, moral, or spiritual principles in our lives. And that's what brings about this personality change. So, yeah, that's a pretty simple solution, isn't it? If you could bring that about in your life. And Jill mentioned the guy from the 60s, I'd forgotten his name, Carl Rogers, who spoke about behavioral psychology. Anyway, that's a roundabout way of saying I love bringing the people that you brought, David, along. I love that. I loved it. And we're not getting as many people as we used to at the beginning, say a year ago, or when you started it. But that's indicative of Zoom generally. You know, at my meeting, at our meeting, our home group meetings, we were getting 190 people at Zoom meetings. Now we get about 20. So the answer is, I don't know. I don't know, David. I don't know if any of that makes any sense. But I think I like the idea that you came up with, and Joe spoke about as well, is initially of having this as I don't mean academic. I don't mean it that academic sounds like it's, but it's a little bit more meaty and weighty than you would get at a normal meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I like that. It gives me food for thought. I like anything that gives me food for thought. That's basically it.
Fleshing it out, maybe. Fleshing out some of the fundamentals of AA and some of the things that are perhaps a little bit more controversial. So Patrick's got his hand up. I'm going to get it. Patrick.
Is right. I don't know about that bit but I think there is a space where there's actual discussion. Like sometimes you hear in AA, leave your brain at the door. Look, good luck to them but I like something that gives me a form of, I'll give you an example. Today I said at a meeting, restless, irritable, and discontent. And I thought about it later is, I'm not restless anymore. I'm not discontent, but I am irritable. So in my meditation, I have to concentrate. What makes me miserable? How does it make me miserable? And what can I do about it? I think there's an element of, sounds grandiose. Just what we had been doing, David, which was just a little bit more in-depth. I don't even want to use the word investigation of the problem and the solution, but just something with a bit more meat. And I think it's what you had been doing, David. I'm not saying, I know the point, Joe, is we've lost, people didn't turn up and stuff like that. We've fairly well, over the years, though, you guys have come together with some great speakers, though, that really profoundly, some of them affected me, some of them didn't, but it's, you know, it's food for thought. And I think that's what we should continue doing. But what do I know? Like, what do I know?
Thanks, John. I'd agree with you. You know, some of the people that came on were just fascinating, you know, their line of thought, their insight, their lives, their experiences, which is something else, you know, and it expanded my thinking also, you know, talking about going a different direction or taking into account how Zoom has affected the fellowship. You know, I just come from a workshop and there was all fellowships at it. There was 150 people at it, you know, the one that Patrick runs in Berlin, and an amazing workshop. And like, I think through Zoom, I think that has It has started to work its own way together. Like Zoom is finding itself, where other fellowships are coming together. All fellowships are coming together at times, you know, based on the 12-step program. You know, just solely on that, and some deep thinkers and some great talks, you know, and workshops and the likes. But to have access to people of a, you know, just totally like get your attention and their life and their life's work and their thinking, you know, and all that. It is an amazing vehicle to have, you know, something completely different, rather than going back into like the fellowship. And you're talking about, you know, I just, when you're talking there, I just read the preamble, you know, and the preamble states, you know, whatever's in the preamble, like AA is an entity, whether it be a UK AA or New York AA, you know, collectively, the members and the committees or whatever the structure is, that's on their guidance, you know. You did mention about some groups being shut out for some reason, you know. I don't have any knowledge of that, but the format that was, and to come on, here's Tom with the weather, and to see and to look forward to, oh, this will be really interesting, you know. This will be really interesting to listen to someone who's come from way out completely, had no experience of anything like that, and it opens up, you know, my thinking. So that's the way. That's what I put to it.
Thanks, Padraig.
Thanks, Padraig. Yeah, we got trapped in this idea that our guest canceled, we won't have a show, right? Like there's plenty of things to talk about.
Yeah. We didn't. I don't think we had any guests cancelled, really. To be honest, maybe I think the lady at the end there did, but
yeah. And then
I
the flying saucer guy canceled.
I was very disappointed about that. I was relieved. I wanted to hear you question him. That was going to be the highlight of my year, actually. 2021, boom. Joe's doing a UFO conversation.
No.
Jill, what do you think?
Well, I had no idea what the conversation was going to be about, and I just love it. I really just wanted to support Joel, but you know, I think it's such an interesting, valid, current topic about things are changing. The world is changing. You look at the national attendance or entrance, people coming into AA, and it's going like this, right? When you look at the national line. But what's happening is, what I believe is happening is other groups are springing up that are more inclusive, less gender inclusive, maybe less rigid. And again, no, I'm going to say this, Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life, and I have nothing but reverence for the steps and the beauty in which Bill wrote it. You know, I just absolutely love it. But he also said this, if you don't mind me reading this, this is from a speech that Bill Wilson gave in 1961. And he said, the process, trial and error, still goes on, and we hope it never stops. Should we ever harden too much, the letter might crash the spirit. We could victimize ourselves by petty rules and prohibitions. We could imagine that we had said the last word. We might even be asking alcoholics to accept our rigid ideas and stay away. May we never strive for progress like that. He raged against rigidity and said, if we don't change, in another speech, he said, if we have to grow or we will deteriorate. That's from another speech in 1961. And he was just so adamant about, because he saw what was happening. He saw a rigidity coming up. It's got to be like this, the way it would, you know, we want to make the big book a Bible. And no wonder. But times are changing. I've seen people leave because having to refer to God as he, or having, you know, just like different things. I've seen many people start other groups, which is a fundamental thing I learned in 1980. If you don't like the meeting, leave and get a coffee pot, you know, and start your own. On another note altogether, we're talking about how to get the word out about this meeting. It is so easy to list a meeting on Zoom, It's so easy. And you don't even have to really, there's things you can't do. I think there's like 5 really simple things that you can't do. You can't promote anything. You can't use a specific name, but it doesn't even say, like, we have this group, we use the alternative 12 steps. Another group I go to is mindful 12 steps. There's so many factions of veering off and rising up that I don't know. I just think they make it very easy in the US. I don't know how it is there, but they make it very easy to list just about anything. I could list your meeting, on Zoom. But anyway, that's and I love the idea about discussions about this. Discussions where we hold space for differences with reverence. We are all doing the best we can. We are all seeing what we see as a result of our exposures, our experiences, and the belief systems we put together. So we're all in this basically together, right? And I was wrong. It was he was the father, Carl Rogers, of humanistic psychology.
Yeah.
Skinner and Watkins and some other people were more into behaviorism. Sorry about
that. No, point taken. You remind me of a story I'll share, if you will all indulge me, about rigidity. Now, my group in Toronto, when we used to meet in a University of Toronto classroom, it's called Beyond Belief, Agnostics and Free Thinkers Group. So, we book our classroom for just sort of 1 hour, right? And we come in, and someone was on setup, and they set the room up with the chairperson and all the literature and everything at the north end, when it was usually at the west end. And people came in, oh, no, this is, sorry, you meant well, but we can't do this. And instead of, like, we had to start 5 minutes late to switch all the chairs around, and just because there was this rigid idea of how the free thinkers meeting had to be set up.
The not so free thinkers, yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, that's absurd in every sense of the word. That's wonderful. And I just on what Jill was saying as well. I think this is true, so you'd have to check this true, but I'm pretty sure in Ireland, and that's the one that's south of Northern Ireland, you're not allowed to have women's meetings.
Or no secular, no women's, no LGBTQ, no men's. That's all of Ireland, because it's all one general service conference. Is that right, John?
John will be able to tell us that, I'm pretty sure. Hold on. John, you can unmute.
Unmute me. Yes, you're right there. No special interest groups, which includes young peoples and women. They are held, but they're not sanctioned or something like that. The young people get around it by calling themselves young at heart meetings.
Right. What does that actually mean if they're not sanctioned? What does that mean? They don't contribute Tradition 7? They don't listed? I mean, what does that actually mean?
I don't know.
They have no voice in AA as a whole.
They have no voice. That's right.
Yeah, and they're not listed in the directory. Yeah.
No, there are no. The Young at Heart meetings. They would go to area. There's no women's meetings. Yeah. If there are, they're not affiliated. I say there's none. They're not sanctioned by GSO or something. Whatever that. Maybe the word sanction might be the right word.
So that'd be interesting to get somebody from GSR in Ireland to come and talk about it if they'd be willing. I mean, I don't know whether they would be, but
they should be invited.
Why.
Yeah, that's right.
Sure, yeah.
I was going to say, so hey, Kelly, you're there, mate. You were in next. Do you want to contribute? I'm asking you to unmute. There you go.
So I'm glad that those of you spoke before me, because I made some notes. So I'm new to AA, like 3-4 months.
Okay.
And I did some time at Renaissance prior to that. Yeah. So it's all good. I got my 5 month coming up at the end of the week.
Cool.
So I'm just in a learning phase, but thank you. What I'm hearing you talk about, so, you know, in Ireland, you can't have these special interest groups. And the only question I have, and we talked about rigidity just prior to that, are they being too rigid? And why wouldn't they allow, like, I don't think that if you want to have a group that's like, we have a men's group one night, because as it's been explained to me, and I don't think that the explanation's out of line, if it's just men, they tend to talk differently than if there's women in the room, and they might open up a little more. This is all about giving, especially the new person, the ability to learn and to heal. And if we're putting restrictions on them, I think that any restriction could prevent somebody from finding the healing that they require and that they need. So we have to be careful on that. You had talked about the Tim Hortons group, right? I've seen all sorts of group names. I understand Tim Hortons is a donut chain, but it's also a person's name.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe you want to be careful with that. But if it's a small group of people and they meet at Tim Hortons and that's where they do it, is it such a bad thing? Like, how much do we have to come? So again, we're putting a lot of rules in where maybe they don't have to be there. If you take that and you look at the traditions of 4, 10, and 11, it just says that we shouldn't be using the AA name for personal gain in that. And if they're just meeting under a Tim Hortons name, that's not gain. They're not accepting outside donations. That's an assumption. So yeah, all these different groups. I joined a young person's group a couple weeks ago here in St. Thomas. I think the youngest person in the room was 40 years old. So I was warned beforehand, like, don't show up and be shocked. But it's all Zoom, and this is what goes to Zoom too, right? Like, I'm able to join your meeting today, and I see, you know, somebody from the other side of the world. I would never get this without Zoom. I would get my meeting that has 15 to 30 people, mostly 15-ish every time, and that's it. And after a couple of months, it gets stale, and I wouldn't grow or learn anything. So this coming to these meetings, I learned so much, and it makes me want to go to more. Right. Last week you had that gentleman on who was the author. So I looked up his book and I put it in my cart on Amazon. And next time I go through there, I may purchase it at that time or put it off. But just, you know, emotional sobriety, we don't talk about that. So how am I going to learn about it if it's not from somebody coming to my group and talking and then inviting all of us back to your group for a look-see? So I think Zoom is a wonderful tool. And a lot of places have, as soon as things started opening up a little, they have gone to a combination of in-person and Zoom all at once. And I think to somebody's point earlier, you put your kids to bed and 5 minutes later you're in a meeting. Now you get to go to a meeting, which you need to go to probably, instead of, oh, there's a snowstorm outside, I'm not going, I didn't get a babysitter. It's a wonderful tool for this organization. It gets you out of your local group and it allows you to go in the worst condition, and it allows you to go to a lot. So you can go and explore, and you can find some groups that really get you excited, right? Like I said, my group here, they're okay, but they're definitely not this group, and they're definitely not some other groups. I go to one on Thursday afternoons, Tropic Thunder, comes out of the UK. It's great, different, and it's a guys meeting only. So it's all different, and it makes me interested for different reasons, you know. And so I'm just going through my stuff here with the world changing and all that, and you know, the world's always going to change. I mean, I always, you know, through my career as an IT person, the slogan on my board was, the only constant is change. So we're going to change. Let's just remember, we got the 12, we got the book, the big book. It's the Bible, as we call it or look at it. Can we take the word God out of it and put another name like our higher power? Sure we can. I go to one NA meeting and they use all the same 12 steps. They just phrase them slightly different and away from an alcoholic point of view to an addict point of view. So I don't have a problem with that. It's still going to teach me the same things, right? So I just think that I'm going to go to these meetings and learn. I've got the ability to join thousands of meetings. I can go to 2, 3, 4 meetings. I got a 24-hour meeting that I got a link to, right? So if I just need to pick me up, I can do that. I think these are all good tools, and we should stop worrying about policing people so much unless, they're getting, financial or personal gains out of it. Then I would say that's something you would look at. But to have a women's meeting in Ireland, why not? Because they're going to go to, it's like having the gym downtown where I went. There was a men's section and a women's section, and the women have a hard enough time going to the gym and working out with guys there. So now they can go and it's just women. So I believe the whole premise was they feel more comfortable. So why not? And if you're not allowing them, then what's your problem? So that's, I think all these topics are good things to talk about. Let's just make sure that the message is getting out and the welcoming mat is out to the new person, and that we make them want to keep coming back. And if they don't have more choice, like if you were to come to my meeting here in town and you didn't like it, it's a small town. Is there a lot of other choices? No. But I go on Zoom. When I left Renaissance, I was on Zoom for 2-3 weeks until I found something in St. Thomas. It gave me meetings. So I like the flexibility and the options available to me, and we should encourage that. Right. So appreciate you letting me talk in your meeting, and happy 24th.
Yeah, thanks.
Wow.
Hi, Billy.
I love listening to people, in their first year of sobriety. They're not talking scripture and verse, it's quite authentic, in their own words, and an objectivity that I couldn't even pretend to have about how meetings are run or what AA is, because, I forget about, at least 3/4 of what it was like to be in my first year of sobriety. Thanks, Kelly. That was great.
Very refreshing. That was amazing, actually. So yeah, and I think you were the most succinct that I could ever have been when I did the intro on what we were trying to do. You said you really smashed it out of the park there, mate. So well done. I hope you keep coming back. It's great to have you contributing. So yeah, Jebbo, good to see you, mate. Got new glasses?
Yeah. Good afternoon or good evening, y'all. Yeah, Jeb, alcoholic addict. I think this is an important discussion. I guess I still go to meetings, a lot of meetings now with Zoom, because I need to be, I need to think about things I don't normally think about. And that's pretty much what I found when I came to AA 40 some years ago. I find a good meeting, whether it's this format or something else, both provocative and evocative. It makes, it just, and those are the two things I look for in anything I read or anything I listen to. I want to use the brains that evolution gave me, which I think is suggested by Bill's book. And I have real concern about what is happening in secular AA. I really don't care what's happening in the prayer meetings, the magical thinking meetings at all. I really don't, even though that's what got me to a certain point where I was able to move on to a different stage of my recovery. I don't think most people care at all what General Service Office or General Service Conference says or does, whether it's in the UK or Ireland or in the United States. And if I think if a group of people want to call themselves an AA meeting, that's their right. Do they have to be registered and pay their dues and be accountable and be a part of the process that is so corrupt in both countries? No, we don't have to. I think the tradition on a group autonomy is essential to the survival of the recovery movement. Now, in secular AA, I do have a concern about the watering down or the departure from the basic 12-step process that has been the foundation for AA all along. Uh, uh,
In what way? What's happening?
well, how many people, when we go to meetings, how often do we hear people even refer to the steps or ever talk about the importance of the fourth step in daily living, ever talk about the practice of on awakening, ever talk about taking an inventory at night, do people ever talk about developing a sane and sound ideal for their future relationships? I do, because nobody else does. That concerns me. When I came to AA, I was not only looking for suggestions, I was looking for some directions on things that I could do differently. Now I could, resist those, as a lot of people have, or I could say, okay, I'll give it a try. Find a trusting somebody I could trust to co-sponsor or be a AA buddy, a recovery buddy, and begin doing that and testing the tools. I don't hear much of that happening. I hear more at meetings, and I won't say it at these meetings. I think I haven't been to every meeting since in the last year, but most of them speakers have some sort of reference to the 12-step process of recovery. Now, that doesn't mean that they haven't brought in things from their Satanism or their UFO things or other things, but they integrated into this general framework that is the foundation of my life today. I keep thinking of, things I used to hear of people saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think there's that great danger for introducing the newcomer to all of these different wild ideas and maybe good ideas, but not giving them a basic idea of getting on the path and staying on the path of recovery. Now, I do appreciate, David, that you always refer to 12-step recovery, as my friend Joe does too, and some others. But that's not all that popular in this blanket umbrella recovery movement, such as that worldwide list of meetings has all sorts of other things in there that have nothing to do with the 12 steps. Nothing. And that's a big concern of mine. And I was talking with a friend this morning in Ireland, and that, I think that he and I need to start talking about precisely how we utilize the steps in our daily lives, and talk about the 5 columns, or if you want to say only 4 columns, or only 3 columns of Bill Wilson's inventory, 4-step inventory. And I heard that sort of thing when I came into AA, people, how they were actually using the 10th step or the 11th step, but I don't hear that. And that concerns me. But at the same time, I really think that our real strength is in the diversity of practice, not just in the diversity of opinions, but the diversity of practice. That meetings like these podcasts have been so great. And they always give me something to talk to somebody else about the next day or the next week. And I don't know what we need, but my thing is, I think smart recovery is wonderful, LifeRing is wonderful, but they don't do the same things that living the 12 steps do. And I would say that with Dharma recovery, but I can take things from those, as many people do, and integrate it into the basic process of the 12 steps. When I was in school 20-some years ago, that my advisor always says, you always want to take things back into the 12-step process, whether we were studying Jung or anybody else or Beck or any. And I said, yeah, because it works to take what I know about the about Buddhism and the Noble Truths and those things, what I know from shamanistic teaching, but to integrate them into my process of living a better life. So that was my little rant for the day, but I didn't have a feeling rush.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yesterday, some of us saw, Jeb was there for sure, presentation on something called generous orthodoxy and AA. And
Yes.
I think that'd be great in this format. Jackie B put it on. And it's about how if you have just orthodoxy, you get rigidity and death. And if you have just generosity, like just free-spiritedness, it becomes shallow and no depth to it. And so the perfect blend of the two is definitely important. So I thought about that a little bit in what you were saying, Jeb.
That was wonderful.
So could you just say that again? Sorry, Jeb.
Well,
Generous orthodoxy, it's called.
and Malcolm Gladwell coined that term. And
He did a podcast on it that Jackie saw, which started it all.
yeah, I haven't watched that yet. But
that's not a 12-step thing. That's just a general.
Oh, it's not 12-step, but she sort of looked at it from a 12-step lens. It really came from sort of the Christian culture of ways of looking at the Bible as like literalists versus sort of broad principle ideas and that sort of thing.
The symbolism and the sort of the spirit and the meaning, as opposed to taking it literally.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so you said it's the blend is between rigidity and free-spiritedness. Is that what we're sort of?
Well, if you need spontaneity in your life, and you need order in your life, right? Order can lead to rigidity and problematic, and spontaneity can lead to chaos and more problems, right? So how do you sort of blend the two where it's spontaneous and orderly? And that's what sort of generous orthodoxy tries to embody, those two things, not one or the other, but
right.
In a yin yang kind of way, although the early Christians wouldn't use that metaphor.
As if a yuppie and a hippie had a love child,
Yeah.
Oh. That's flippant. Sorry. So yeah. Well, that's really interesting, Jeb. Thanks for that, mate. I'm interested to see what you said about secular. I haven't been to enough secular meetings. I go to the occasional one. Joe sort of lobs me an invite. What's it called, John? The camera's asking again. Sort of say that again.
Oh, generous orthodoxy. And what inspired the presentation we saw was Malcolm Gladwell has a podcast called Revisionist History. And on his show, he did an episode called Generous Orthodoxy. So if you are a podcast consumer, you can look that up anytime. And
Malcolm Gladwell. Okay.
A Google search will help you find it.
Okay. It's interesting what you say about secularism, because secular meetings, like I said, because I've been to a few. Joe's invited me to a few, and I go to a few, and I find it really refreshing. Although sometimes, and this is only me, sometimes it does descend into kind of a God baiting thing, and it becomes kind of it's almost flipping prejudice on its head and being prejudiced about people who have a higher power. And I'm always wary of that, because I know a guy who's long-term sober, who's an atheist, and he's kind of almost he's so prejudiced that it becomes like he's kind of reflecting the prejudice that the sort of more religious people have about people who don't, you know what I mean? It's kind of, he finds a mirror position, and it's quite awkward, I think. So, so I guess that is that orthodoxy. So, if you know what I mean. Yeah. John, good to see you, John. Have you just sort of, I don't know if you're following what we're talking about. We're looking at a new direction for the podcast, and we're kind of looking at
this is
topics in AA and the AA, and I just said, have you got any thoughts?
This is a continuation of a previous meeting. I came in late, and I still see we're stuck. What's it all about, Alfie? What works? I would be 100% in favor of rigidity. As soon as somebody comes up with a methodology that keeps 70 or 80% of the drunk sober, sign me up. But we've not found anything even, well, we're a whole order of magnitude below that in terms of success rate. And so we're still trying to figure it out. And I love being in meetings with Jeb because we're like bookends. We've both been sober a long time, and nothing could be more opposite than our approach to this whole process. And we seem to be happy with what we ended up with. I don't know, I am. And Jeb is always smiling. But I had a very odd entrance. I didn't start drinking alcoholically until I was 45. And I quit when I was 51. But I didn't really quit. It quit. And that's what I really like about Here's Tom program, because we often get people who have made a transition in life that was not directed by the intellect or hopes and fears and all the rest of the stuff that we all carry around with us. So, but I don't know what the hell to do with that. I mean, I woke up one day and I didn't say I'm going to quit drinking today. It quit, and I never thought about it again. Well, I had been tempted off and on by a cold beer ad in the summertime, that sort of thing, but nothing serious. And what came along with that was this very strange sort of falling down the rabbit hole and coming up with, I don't know, I just call it radical equitability. And not that I didn't give a shit about life. I was still, I was still alive and interested in the world, but all references to everything I'd lost, all the trouble I had caused in those 6 years, and what I was going to do in the future, none of that stuff passed through my mind. It's not that I didn't care, it just didn't seem important. And I've told the story before that my first year of sobriety I spent as a bicycle messenger in Manhattan, because I had a bike and that's the first thing I thought to do. So I needed a little cash flow, so what the hell? So I was the oldest bike messenger in Manhattan. I think I still hold the record. And so I was sober for 2 years. And a friend of my father's took me to an AA meeting, thought I might enjoy it. And it was quite pleasant. So when I got back to New York, I started going to meetings. And I didn't go because I needed to get sober or was concerned about not staying sober. I just kind of enjoyed the environment, the sociability of it all. And occasionally we'd have a good speaker, but most of it consisted of me relating to people that I met in AA. I met kids I went to high school with 35 years after I last seen them in New York in AA meetings. So there was that whole thing going on. And I've enjoyed the social aspects of AA for about 38 years now. And there are some places I've moved where 100% of my social life is with AA people. So I have nothing against it. It's just that it doesn't work, generally speaking. And I just get all excited and tingly when we have a Advaita or a non-dual speaker on Here's Tom, and that's my territory. Although when I talk about it in meetings, regular secular meetings, I get a lot of glazed eyes and deer in the headlights look. Nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about. And so I tend to soft pedal that. But now that we're with David, we can pull out all the stops.
Well, I mean, this has been great feedback. And I think what we're going to promise people is they will enjoy half of our half of our episodes very much.
Yeah.
And half of them will disturb them, and hopefully we don't leave anybody out of the discussion, because I think we're better together and all
Gotta
that.
go, guys.
Yeah, you bet.
Hey, John.
Thanks, John.
Sure.
I think we got a lot to work with. Hopefully
Yeah.
we'll grow and progress, and it'll evolve as it goes, and all of you will feel like part of a community where you can contribute to subject matter.
I was thinking maybe, Joe, just before we've got just a couple more minutes left, is maybe that if everyone can go to the Facebook page for Here's Tom with the Weather, and if they've got ideas for topics, or they have ideas for guests, and they know people, as opposed to just saying, why don't you try this, guys? If you know somebody who's on an AA board or a GSR or a GSO, or has written a book or has an interesting take on the 12 steps, then send us his name and his contact details, and we certainly
Theirs.
yes, there's hers
Yeah.
or his or theirs or them's. Yes.
And I think John brought something up interesting, and that is that phenomenon of connection. And I do think that's something that's being explored now. What can happen in this meeting that helps people to connect with one another and to the overall topic of recovery better? And and that's what they'll keep coming back, giving that sense of belonging. Yeah, this is discussion that really interests me. And that's the sort of thing we've had the last year or so. And but more of that. And I trust you guys to come up with some great ideas for us.
Yeah, we'll only stay 2 episodes more than were needed and wanted. We promise that.
Yeah.
That's been great. So thank you very much, everyone. So we'll be back Monday. It might be a topic meeting, a topic thing where we discuss a certain topic. But if you want to, everyone, you can unmute if you want to unmute yourselves. And just come back Monday. We're live on Zoom. It's going to be recorded on Spotify, etc., and on YouTube. We're going to put this on YouTube for anyone for comments. But please, we're looking for this feedback. This is a fluid meeting, and we're looking for any kind of feedback, names, contacts. If you can help, God, you could even host it if you wanted to as well. So it's just let us know. So John's got his finger up.
Yeah. What about that guy, Joe, the generous orthodoxy? What was it? Malcolm Gladwell, was that his name?
Malcolm Gladwell might be a little out of reach for us, but we could get Jackie B, who did the presentation before, come on, and
that'd be great.
She did.
I love that. Yeah, that sounds good. And what were you saying, Joe, that he has a podcast? Who has the podcast?
This was all born of Jackie listening to Malcolm Gladwell's podcast. It's called Revisionist History. It's on all of the podcast platforms. Malcolm Gladwell.
Is it revisionist? I think I'm on this. But it's not just revisionist history for AA. It's just revisionist history.
No. Yeah.
It's a great podcast. Yeah. Well, that'd be great. Anyway, rigidity. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Have you had Miley T on?
Miley T.
Yeah.
Writing it down.
Marty Mann. I'll contact her.
Oh yeah, Miley T would be great. She does this presentation on Marty. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll send her I'll give her a call.
Yeah, tell her we're interested. Tell her Joe would love to see her again.
Okay.
And it's great. It just sort of speaking to sort of women in AA and sort of the early pioneering of, and the larger recovery community and the just the difficulties of, like, imagine being lesbian, probably not stoked in Christian tradition, female, at your first AA meeting, right? A bunch of guys in New York. Like, how tough would that be? But she helped a lot of people in a lot of ways, for sure. Yeah, so I would love to get Miley here. Yeah.
Is there anyone that does the racial history of AA?
Jackie B is another one who's looked at all types of underrepresented populations in AA. Definitely in Toronto, you go to NA meetings and it's way more diverse and a lot younger. Just because of all the people pointing their fingers, you know, that's an outside issue. Well, they go somewhere else, right?
Okay, because I think
But-
that to me is one of the things is, you know, like John mentioned the increase in women during Zoom, but I haven't seen an increase in ethnically diverse people coming to AA through Zoom.
Well,
you know.
one of the growth areas in Zoom is BIPOC meetings, Black, Indigenous, people of color. And
What's that called again?
BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color.
Okay.
And
That'd be great to get some people on that who's organising a couple of those meetings to talk to them. Because that to me is where it's at. That's where it's at for me.
Yeah, that'd
and
be
if you
wonderful.
don't qualify for those meetings, then you can't attend them.
Yeah.
They're
We could certainly
So
contact them,
that's
couldn't we?
they would be interesting people to get, you know, to use Tom with the weather to talk about that type of diversity, you know. It's really, really important. And you know, the historical evidence of AA, you know, in 1939 in the west side of New York, Irish people weren't allowed. Irish Catholics weren't allowed to come.
Yeah.
Now, not to all the meetings, of course,
Yeah.
but certainly no Black or Jewish people were allowed, and Irish, you know. So it's a bit controversial, but I think at a meeting like this is something that could be talked about without attacking AA. You know,
That's right. Yeah.
You know,
I
go to a lot of Buddhist recovery meetings, and seriously, the first 20 minutes is always, I'm exaggerating, the first 10 minutes is always about how they hate AA and it doesn't work, you know. And I get it. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not saying I don't get it, but what's the point of talking like that, you know?
Yeah.
What's the point? But I think there's a space can be created by Here's Tom with the Weather to have that type of conversation without necessarily attacking anybody, just as a pure academic debate in relation to diversity, BIPIC, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I think we could create that space there.
But certainly, the BIPOC thing, as I've heard a few times, but it's never really been brought into the front. And I think it's something that's a real growth area. If AA got behind it, it'd be fantastic, because it's obviously underrepresented in the meetings that I go to. You know, white middle class male. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's you know.
Yeah. I have been to a couple, and John made the point very succinctly at the beginning, where he said in relation to the discussions like that can negate the message of Alcoholics Anonymous, or negate recovery if we're just talking about if we're just talking about the problem. It's only just talking
the problem.
Yeah.
You know,
I think we've been down the road with that before, and I think we're pretty good with looking at the positives.
No, I get it. No, I'm just saying I'm comparing in a way. Here's Tom with the Weather with other meetings that I go to, where that type of thing would be discussed, but would be discussed in terms of a problem, as you know, to identify the problem and then talk what's the cause of the problem and what's the solution. It's nearly all fear, I think. Fear, hatred. I don't know.
I've got a character I'd love to get on. His name is Sheldon Solomon. He's a social psychologist, and he is a proponent of something called, it's got a fancy name that doesn't mean anything. It's called terror management theory, but it's based on the work of Ernest Becker.
Yes.
Anybody read
No.
Escape from Evil or Denial of Death? Yeah, he posthumously won a Pulitzer Prize for Denial of Death.
Wow.
But which he changed his mind in the last part of his life.
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah, he did completely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he ended up, I think his last years were in Vancouver. Like he had a very difficult time, Ernest Becker. Like he'd get these 1 year, 10 years, but like faculty was against him. Students loved him, faculty hated him.
Yeah, I get it.
then he would
Yeah.
get something and leave.
Yeah. But it's the basic premise is humans are the first species to know they're going to die, and we're not quite evolved enough to cope with this terrorizing idea. So we create all of these projects, religions that offer eternal life, or procreating, or creating a business or writing a book that will last for infamy, right? And nation states that I'm a proud whatever I am, right? And that's great until you come up with someone with a opposite worldview that sort of threatens yours, right? And that's where a lot of the political and religious fighting have come from, and all that sort of thing. And we see it in AA, right? My style versus your style, and all of this.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Vaxxers versus anti-vaxxers, anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, the ego does anything it can to stay alive, doesn't it? It'll suck on anything. It's like a big mosquito.
Yes.
Choose a side.
Well, I think if you take the diversity that we've been speaking about here, the type of diversity everyone's speaking about, I think if there was one phrase that here's Tom could talk about, was being that we create a space to allow those opinions to be voiced. Whatever they are.
Yeah, or they're not shut down. Like, we can endure anything for an hour, right?
Yeah, absolutely. which
right.
we have over the years. We have.
You say that out loud, and if I'm a person of color and I look at this group, why would I want to come to a place where a bunch of white people are telling me I should be welcome? They don't believe it.
Yeah, well,
Google for AA and colored and BIPOC, there's tons of stuff out there. So Google it, and I just looked at a little bit. And
but Kelly, that's the problem, and I understand that's the problem. I think the thing is to identify the nature of the problem and then see if there's any solution that can be made. I'm not disagreeing with you. I couldn't agree with you more. 2, 6, 7 white
people, we're the problem. For BIPOC, we're the problem.
We know that. I think we know that.
Maybe, let's not global identify. Maybe.
I used to live in near Flemington Park, and I witnessed a couple of black guys on a bus station having a fight with a knife. And the third guy says, "What are you guys doing? Why are you doing this to each other? Save it for Whitey." That was the neighborhood attitude. Like, I totally understand. I personally didn't do it, but that's how they view it. They think that we have put them where they are, and maybe in the past we did. So it's going to be very difficult without some BIPOC representation to bring them in. Just giving you a heads up of what that's what I think is probably going to need to happen, but I could be wrong. But we should be aware of that.
Yeah, and some of this we can find clues in our history, like, because we do have a history of our first African-American members in AA, our first women in AA, first LGBTQ plus, and so on and so forth. And like, AA has this mythical liberalism where we welcome everybody, but we all have our unconscious biases that, are engaged before our brain is engaged, right? And our lips are flapping all of a sudden.
Yeah. And they have a lot of BIPOC meetings and associations and stuff available to them where they feel comfortable. If I'm going to go to a meeting and it's all black people, I'm probably going to do that, as opposed to going I'm just, from what I've observed, I'm not saying it's going to be 100% like that, but they would lean that way, because when you listen to it, it's like, well, we speak each other's language.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that it's not going to necessarily be an easy thing for us.
Maybe we should have somebody speak on white fragility.
Whatever.
I think it should.
Whatever, but I
guys, I've got to listen. As much as I want to keep this going, I've got to go, because I've got to go and.
That's
Me too.
right.
Yeah, thanks,
that's
everybody.
right. We have to respect
fledgling marriage alive.
boundaries.
Thank you, David, and everybody. Jeb, and
Great contribution,
Bill
everybody.
and
Jill,
Padraig.
See you next Monday.
Jill, don't go anywhere. I just want a quick chat with Jill, but I'll see you all later.
Okay, you
So good
bet.
to see
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
I welcome Kelly.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Thanks a lot. See you next week.
See you, Patrick.
Goodbye.
Best
See you,
look,
Kelly.
Kelly.
Good to see you.
Adios.
Joe, do you just want to hang on for 1 sec, or is he gone? No, he's gone. See you.
Lost him.
Hey, what do you think? What do you think? Would you be up for doing that?
Sure.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You on WhatsApp?
I am.
Right. His number. Let me put it in.
Sure.
So that's. I think I
And
might
you're
even have it.
changing to Monday, which is so great. Friday was
Yeah,
killing me.
no. Well, I can't. I've just got to have a life, you know. So.
Yeah, I bet.
So what is it? 001. What's your number?
786
786
543
543
7535.
7535. Let's have a look. Come on, WhatsApp. Is it 001?
I think it's just one. Okay, give me yours.
Mine is 44 7824 61 treble 68.
61 treble 68.
68, yeah, 6668.
So I got, let's see. I'm going to try you right now.
On WhatsApp, yeah?
Yeah. You get it?
No?
447-824-616668.
Correct. Yeah, oh, yep, here it is.
Okay, good.
That's a text.
Yeah.
It's not WhatsApp. Have you got
Okay.
WhatsApp?
I did it on WhatsApp. It is WhatsApp.
I
Let me
haven't got
try
it on
something
WhatsApp.
else.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please check the number and dial again. Or dial 611 or...
That's WhatsApp too.
No, that's not WhatsApp.
Well, here.
Well,
Look,
you
see?
need to so you download, yeah, but download the app. That says it's a green app. It's a
Yeah.
green thing that says WhatsApp. This here. Let's have a look. See that green phone thing there.
Yep, that's my WhatsApp.
Okay, so hit that.
That's what I got, and I got you.
I'm gonna
Okay.
call you. Wait on. So let me call you. So Jill Seiler. It doesn't say you're on WhatsApp.
I've been on WhatsApp since the
You
beginning.
use it. Really? 001-786 543 7535.
Yeah. What's really
Got you.
weird is that I said,
It's come
I
up.
don't know.
This is right. This is me. I'm saying you've just come up. That's bizarre. This is me, David. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add you to a group with me and
Okay.
Joe,
Okay.
and we'll stay in touch this week. So rock up next week. We'll keep you're on the Facebook page as well, and just keep watching it, and then we'll see
Okay.
what the topic is, because I've sort of started a new job today, so I'm kind of a little bit
Good.
all over the shop. But
Yeah.
it'll
Let me
be
know if I can help, what I can do to help. Okay.
yeah, that's fine. But that's great. Welcome aboard. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for everything
All
you
right.
do. Okay.
No worries. Cheers,
Have a
Jill.
good life. Have a minute. Bye.
Bye.